Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I wish you a very warm welcome to yet another virtual meet of Colors of Glory Foundation. I am R. Ramakrishnan, one of the coordinators of these virtual meetings. Before we get into today's presentation, I would like to briefly explain what our foundation is about. We are the first organization of its kind in India, solely dedicated to promoting awareness of India's military heritage. Though championed by military veterans, it is composed of members with both civilian and armed forces background who share a deep love for military history. For over 3 years since we came into existence in 2016, we have been conducting various outdoor and indoor events on a monthly basis in the nature of battle reenactments, military tattoos and exhibitions, documentaries and film shows, presentations and seminars, military history quiz, commemorative marathons, and so on in the city of Chennai. These events have been highly popular, earning us considerable amount of public recognition. However, after the pandemic put brakes on our outdoor activities, we have switched over to the virtual mode and have been hosting meetings such as today's, almost on a weekly basis, wherein a number of eminent speakers have been addressing our forum. Besides the meetings, our website covers a lot of India's military history through blogs written by veterans and others. You'll find the URL of our website, www.colorsofglory.org, at the bottom of the e-invites that you receive. Kindly visit not only our website but our Facebook page and customized YouTube channel and stay updated on our activities. We invite you all of you who are not members of Colors of Glory, to come to our fold. Be a member and be part of a very unique initiative. We aspire to expand our base across India and conduct our physical events in cities other than Chennai too, once the pandemic is over. Meanwhile, we intend to continue with our virtual events not only when the threat is on, but later on as well as a regular feature, so that we reach out to ever more people across the country and overseas. So if you have a passion for military history or would like to know about our unique military heritage, please do join us. While the modalities of obtaining an online membership are given on our website, you are welcome to email us or call us for offline membership too. Our email ID and phone number are available on the website. Do take up a membership and strengthen our hands. Ladies and gentlemen, before we get into this webinar, here's a kaleidoscope of our activities. So that was a brief overview of what we do. So let's now start our session, and I hand over the virtual floor to Captain Sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Annu and I know each other for a while. Ever since she got in touch with me a couple of years ago, to sort of seeking my assistance for her project, getting some photos and all. Admittedly, I have not been of much help to her. Just a photo or two only I've been able to send. But we had organized a meeting, a physical meeting a year before or so at the Madras Literary Society, of which also I'm a part of, where she made an excellent presentation. That time itself, I had this in mind. But now this virtual meet started. I thought it will be a very good idea too. It's a remarkable mission that he has undertaken. I mean, with her kind of track record, she could chosen any areas, but this one, for her dedication, her passion for this, World War II soldiers, and it's something amazing. It's congratulations, Annu, for this wonderful mission you have taken up. So we are so proud to host your talk here. Now just to make the formal introduction, Miss Annu Palakunnathu Matthew is a multimedia artist, photographer, and professor of art at the University of Rhode Island, where she has also served as director of the Center for the Humanities and Sylvia Shanley Professor of Nonviolence and Peace Studies. Her larger work draws on archival photographs as a source of inspiration to examine concepts of memory and to re-examine historical narratives and the legacies of colonization. She was recently in India for 6 months on a Fulbright fellowship, collecting family photos and stories of the unremembered Indian soldiers of the Second World War. Ms. Matthews' recent exhibitions include those at the Royal Ontario Museum, Museum of Fine Arts Boston, San Jose Museum of Art, Museum of Fine Arts Houston, Victoria and Albert Museum, 2018 Kochi Muziris Biennale, and the Smithsonian. She has an upcoming solo show at the Newport Art Museum in 2021 on her work on these unremembered Indian soldiers. Her talk will center around her 2019 Fulbright Scholarship Fellowship, during which she crowdsourced family photos and stories from some of the families of Indian soldiers who fought in World War II. This material has become the basis for upcoming installations, including a recent one commissioned for the 2018 Kochi Muziris Biennale on the Italian campaign of World War II. In a presentation, Ms. Matthew passes out the confluence of factors that played a role in this history complicated by partition. Through a striking blend of still and moving images, her work prompts us to consider our historical narrative's incompleteness. She hopes that you will also have photos and stories to share. That's Annu Matthew for you, ladies and gentlemen. Over to you, Annu.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Oops. So what's happening here? Okay, there we go.
Oh, yeah.
Oops. Okay, one sec. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, Captain Ramachandran, for this invite and supporting my project very early on. I think I read an article where you were mentioned and I emailed you out of the blue and you were extremely supportive from the beginning. So my talk today is going to be primarily on the work on the Indian soldiers who fought in World War II. And before I show you that work, I will also briefly show you some earlier projects so you can understand the context that I'm coming from. I'm an artist and a professor of art who draws on archival photographs to re-examine historical narratives and the legacies of colonizations. I'm also an artist who has lived between 3 cultures, and hence I'm both an insider and an outsider. I was born in England, and this is me as the first Indian Virgin Mary in England. I grew up in India. I went to school in Bangalore and then college in Chennai. I now live in the United States. Living between cultures also gives me a different perspective. I also want to mention that I'm not from a military family. As an artist, I'm especially interested in human stories and why some stories are lesser known. As someone outside of a military family, I can make these stories and history more accessible to a larger audience. So let me briefly show you some work where I try to bring a different perspective. An Indian from Indian is about the confusion between our type of Indian and the Native American. Because of the strange amalgamation of accents that I have between living in England, India, and now the US, people often ask me where I'm really from. And if I say that I'm an Indian, I often have to clarify that I'm an Indian from India and not a Native American. And all this confusion started because Christopher Columbus got lost looking for India and found North America instead. So in my body of work, I take 19th century photographs of Native Americans and pair them with self-portraits. My goal is to reverse the gaze and to reconsider historical narratives and those outside the majority. So on the left here, you have a noble savage, and on the right, you have a savage noble. And on the left is a red Indian, on the right is a brown Indian. It also touches on parallel approaches to ways that colonial powers treated and photographed the indigenous communities in both India and the United States. I would go further into this on a presentation about this body of work, but we're here today to talk about World War II. I would also add it's 8:30 in the morning in the United States, and I usually don't talk before 9 o'clock. So I'm a little caffeinated and hopefully won't stumble too much. So another project that shows you about these changing perspectives is about the children of partition of British India. I did this work on my first Fulbright in 2012, and this project relates to what I'm working on right now with World War II. I'm going to be speaking a lot about the history in South Asia, and it's something that I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar with. But I think it's important to bring the different threads together to understand this complicated history. During the partition, over 150 lakh people were displaced in just 3 months, and over 10 lakh died. The partition was one of the most violent periods in the 20th century, only exceeded by the killing during the 2 world wars. For someone who grew up in India, associated in my mind with Gandhi, nonviolence, and yoga, this creates a strange disconnect. In my project, I tell the stories of the children of partition who are now in their 80s and 90s. My aim is to collaborate with my subjects to create work that is accessible to a larger audience by using their family photographs. What happened to them should not be lost to history. So I'm going to play you the Kohli story, which is a 1-minute photo animation. I went from being wealthy to a penniless refugee. My father went back after 2 years to his home at Lakshmi Mansions, flat number 39. The person living there had a British mother and a Muslim father. The man asked if he would like a cup of tea. My father said, when I was served in my silver tea service with my monogram on it, I realized that I was homeless. So I've created a number of these, what I call photo animations, using the family's original family photograph and then photographing different generations of the family. And this 90-second video gives you an understanding about the process.
No, that's my grandfather, but I can't find my great grandfather. My grandfather's brother's wife.
Okay.
And it starts before any other wedding function.
Okay, that's
That's how many dress.
Yeah.
It's very unusual for someone to wear a lehenga on a When you're keeping in house, keep it बनाना। इसलिए वो पुरानी दुकान में अच्छी ज़्यादा आती लाइट में। फोटो में जैसी लाइट है ना, नई फोटो की जैसी के साथ। पहले की फोटो होगी जो ये जवान थे। अब शायद आगे and then they shifted to that Mehroli house. वहाँ they found some gold. और बाकी यहाँ हो गए।
To show what you did.
What amazes me is that I walk into these strangers' homes and they open up to me. We initially bond by looking at their albums and photographs. This is one of the strengths of photography, the power to trigger memories and shared storytelling. I present the work in a hollowed out 1947 encyclopedia with an iPad mini inside. As Swarthmore professor Dr. Bhakirathi Mani pointed out, the act of hollowing out the book is a metaphor of the violence that happened during partition. But there is also issues with memory and oral histories. As Urvashi Butalia, author of The Other Side of Silence, a book of oral histories with survivors of the partition eloquently wrote, I would like to ask if there is a way in which people's stories, notwithstanding all their problems, can somehow expand, stretch the definitions and boundaries of history to find a place in it. As an artist, I can take that license, which is a little more difficult for a scholar to justify. And the stories that I have recently collected have been a large part of the unremembered Indian soldiers of the Second World War. So now let me get to this project. First, I find it staggering that the 2.5 million Indians' contributions in World War II as the largest volunteer army in history are barely acknowledged in India, where I studied, or globally, especially as World War II was truly global, with pivotal conflicts in the European, Pacific, and Asian theaters. Through my earlier work on the partition of British India, I came upon the powerful story of the politically complicated role of the Indian soldiers who fought for the British colonial power during World War II. As Yasmin Khan, author of India at War, wrote, in the rush to write new histories of nation states after 1947, much of the history of the 1940s was locked out from official memory. Tales of the freedom struggle took precedence. For the 2018 Kochi Musri Biennale Commission, I focused on the Indian soldiers who fought in the Italian campaign. One of the reasons I focused on that campaign is that the Battle of Monte Cassino was pivotal in winning the war, and the Indian troops played a critical role. Their tenacity is reflected by the fact that the Indian soldiers were awarded 30% of the Victoria Crosses awarded to soldiers fighting in Italy. To give some context, in Italy, there are 5 graveyards with the remains of Indian soldiers, 2 just for Indians and 1 for Gurkhas. They are in Arezzo, Cassino, Forlì, Sangro, and Rimini. I did a majority of my work in Cassino. And this is what the graveyard looks like. It includes the remains of soldiers from the different colonies that fought for the British, which include the Australian, Canadian, New Zealand. And right in the back where that tree is where the Indian soldiers lie. And we also photographed in the Commonwealth graveyard in Forlì, which is just for South Asian soldiers. I projected archival footage from the Imperial War Museum that shows the Indian soldiers with the Allies in Italy. And this is edited footage that I used in the projection. So I did this projection onto the gravestones of the Indian soldiers at dusk and at dawn. So you can see some of the same footage I showed you now projected. And in the second row of gravestones, you can see the small projector. When we were shooting in Forli, the cemetery was right next to a busy street, unlike in Casino where it's much more secluded. So we hoped we wouldn't attract too much attention, but we were largely successful. But on the last day, the last hour, someone reported us and the police arrived. And I'm a bit of a wimp when it comes to police, whether it's in India, US, or Italy. Luckily, my husband's a photojournalist and is used to dealing with people and the police. So and we of course don't speak the language. So he just pointed at me and said, "Indian artist." And the policeman said, "Artist, no problem." And I actually took a photograph with the policeman. So now I'm going to, this is a clip from the installation for the Kochi Biennale. So at the installation in Kochi, the room included a reflection pool. So when the viewer's watching the movie, the video, it's a metaphor for reflecting on this lesser known history. So on the day of the Kochi Musri Biennale opening, my friend Yamini Nair heard about my installation and sent me this photograph of her grandfather, Lieutenant Colonel Gopal Chakravarti. What I love about this photograph is that you can connect to the person. So it has sent me down this rabbit hole of sorts to try and collect photographs of the soldiers from family photographs of the soldiers from World War II. This is in comparison to if you do a quick Google search for soldiers from World War II, you see more of headshots. And you, as someone outside of a military family or military history, I don't connect as much to the photographs, and that's been one of my aims to really collect family photographs. So a year ago, I was in India on a 6-month Fulbright fellowship, and I've been collecting these family photographs. I heard their stories from a range of people from different religions, castes, and socioeconomic backgrounds. And in the process of learning about their unheralded sacrifice, ask, why is this history not part of our collective narrative in South Asia or globally? To give more context to what was happening at the time, the independence movement was going on in South Asia. It is well established that India's independence soon after World War II was born of the Quit India movement, the INA, the Indian National Army, led by Subhash Chandra Bose, where the Red Fort trials by the British of the INA, for INA soldiers ramped up our passions for independence and was the nail in the coffin of the British rule of India. The Bombay Mutiny by the Royal Indian Navy of 1946 was an example of this. The INA's logic was my enemy's enemy is my friend, with the British colonizer being the enemy. The INA fought with the Japanese and against the Allies in Kohima, another critical battle. They're also heralded as heroes in India for fighting the British colonizer rather than joining them. Even General Thammayya's brother, Ponnappa, joined the INA. But why are the contributions of the Indian soldiers not recognized or acknowledged? If the Allies had lost the war, would we have a different colonizer? Were they part of this larger narrative of getting independence? I would argue that they were, that South Asia achieving independence was the confluence of all three, the Quit India movement, the INA and the Red Fort trials, and the Indian soldiers. Some of the lack of acknowledgement is also because the Indian leaders were absent from wartime events as they were in jail. The independence, or rather the partition of South Asia into India, West Pakistan, and East Pakistan happened soon after in 1947. Plus, the contributions of the Indian Army are a reminder of our colonial past. Yes, this is a complicated history. Narrative and history. Can all three be acknowledged? Can we consider the human stories and contributions of the Indians who fought in Second World War? I would argue that we do have a colonial past which we cannot erase. Who are these people who volunteered to fight? Some came from middle-class families, some from royalty, and some from low-income families. Some were swashbuckling young men who believed in the cause, and others joined out of poverty in search of a regular meal and salary exasperated by human-made famine by the British in Bengal. And this famine is largely blamed on Churchill. There are several horrific photographs from the famine which spread beyond Bengal. I decided to use this liner cut by Chitra Prasad Bhattacharya. So here are snippets of the stories that I heard. A soldier fell into the ocean and was there so long his nails fell off. A soldier came home to find his wife remarried. She thought he had died. And this is the story of Lieutenant General Kala. He left his wife of 6 weeks to fight in another continent. He was captured at the siege of Tobruk in Libya in 1941 and sent to a prisoner of war camp in Avezzano, Italy. Kala at the camp picked up a smattering of Italian, and he and his friend Sandhu managed to escape the camp. Because of this knowledge of Italian, he was able to convince Giovanni, who was an Italian farmer, to shelter them until the war was over. And Giovanni suggested to Kala to cut his hair so that he could pass as being Italian. And so Kala did that. And Kala continued to be in touch with the family. They corresponded by letters in Italian until he died. And his daughter, Avjit, did go back to Italy to visit the family. I also discovered that my mother's uncle also fought in World War II. And the author Sri Nair, some of you may know his book, recent book, which is on the Air Force in Indian Air Force in World War II. Through him, I learned that some soldiers sported the Hitler mustache as an act of rebellion. From Meena Mani, I collected these photographs of her father, Flight Lieutenant Arjun Merchandani, who received a scholarship and left for England in the 1940s to pursue a PhD in engineering. Arjun's thesis was destroyed in London's bombings, and his PhD program was cancelled during the war. He joined the Air Force as his best hope for getting back to India. He fought in Europe, Africa, and Burma. And he was not a pilot, he was in the signals. Arjun had a passion for the arts and created charcoal murals on the walls of the messes. His children said it was a way to shift his thoughts from the atrocities and hardships of war and retain his humanity. And I love this photograph, which is of his sister dressed up in his uniform. Some of the images I received from people were through posts on social media like Brown History, which is on Instagram, where I received the story of Lieutenant Colonel B.K. Somaya. He joined the army in 1939 out of necessity to bring up his 9 siblings after their parents passed. While posted in the on the Burma front in 1946, he injured his leg from a grenade explosion, and the doctors were unable to remove some of the shell, which was embedded in his bone. His granddaughter said one of the good outcomes was that he could always sense an approaching storm or rainfall because the cast iron would shrink and expand with the weather. And this is Lieutenant Maqsood Alam, who was 17 when he joined and fought in the Burma front. And I received this photograph from Alice Mahmood. And when I wanted to get a better quality image, she said that in 1971, her house was looted and set on fire, and they lost all the documents and photographs. And as Captain mentioned, at the talk that I did at the Madras Literary Society, organized by him, Mr. Francis attended and brought a stack of photographs of his father, Captain P.F. Verghese, and also the photograph of who was then Captain Krishnamurthy, who became an air commodore. He was an eye doctor who was then later stationed in Greece, where he met Venus, who he married. And some of you from Chennai may know of them. Lieutenant Colonel Nanavati came back after the Battle of Monte Cassino, for which he won a military cross for bravery, to find that his wife and daughter thought he had died and she had remarried. He did remarry eventually and unfortunately died in the helicopter crash in 1963. And we saw this image in the initial video that was shown. Subedar Subramaniam also fought in Casino and was the first Indian to get the George Cross. And again, the captain helped me connect with his family. Havildar Murga Kalti is remembered by his grandchildren as being a terror at home. And for some photographs, I haven't received much information. And obviously, General Thimayan needs no introduction. And recently I received this photograph. I'm still processing the story, but this is Inderjit Singh Gill, who was born of an Indian father and a Scottish mother. He first fought for the British Army and then came to India and joined the Indian Army after independence. And many of you may know this book, especially if this is a Chennai audience. And he later became Lieutenant General. So I am still collecting these photographs. So, please do look through your albums if you have relatives who fought in World War II. And it's a way of also learning more about your family history. And you may be surprised, like I was, to know that one of my uncles fought in World War II. And this is the email and website. So, I was in India on a Fulbright for 6 months, and these are all the people who helped me collect the photographs. So now I'm back in the US, and so what's next? What am I going to do with all this material that I've collected? My role as an artist is to take that abstract number of the 2.5 million Indian soldiers who fought in World War II and transform it into
soldiers fort.
Oops.
You-
So my role as an artist is to take that abstract number and transform it into something tangible and accessible by my audience or any audience.
How about my father-in-law?
Please,
Art can play a
please
crucial
remain
role.
muted.
I was in the Indian Army. Yeah.
So could everyone stay muted?
Posted in Bangalore, MAG.
No, please remain muted, all of you. We'll have the question hour when you can all speak. Don't unmute yourself.
I think it's Rima. Rima, if you could mute yourself, please.
Yeah, sorry. I just wanted to tell you that my father-in-law, who was Colonel Amarnath Kashyap, also fought and was a prisoner of war in Singapore. And there's a book his daughter has written about his diary, which is a sort of fictionalized account because she didn't have all the facts. So I'll give the book to your mom and I will unmute.
That would be wonderful. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll have an interactive session in the end. We all
Yeah.
Please
So
carry on.
art can play a crucial role in shaping the politics of remembrance, challenging how we have internalized narratives of World War II. When I was in India, I did a collaboration with students from Srishti School of Art and Design and Technology based in Bangalore. And we made these 3D photographs called Lithophanes. And when you put light behind them, you see the actual photograph. So we experimented projecting video onto these lithophanes.
Yeah, exactly. There are some like probably the aerial shots, and this would be really good.
And we had an exhibition of the work at the metro station at Cubbon Park. What we also did is we created silhouettes of two of the photographs that I had collected on the walls. We made a silhouette, and then we had some of the 89,000 names of the Indian soldiers who had passed away in World War II scrolling past those silhouettes. I'm going to be incorporating some of this in my upcoming show, especially the silhouettes. I was scheduled to have a show in Bangalore in March, but that has been indefinitely postponed. So what I've also been doing is I've made 3D crystals of some of these photographs. You can see they're slightly ghostly, but you can clearly also see the photograph. And they have a 3-dimensional quality to them. And I'm going to be editing the archival footage from all 3 theaters to project through these crystals. With the video projection, I will also be creating a soundscape, which will include some of the stories that I collected. And I'm looking for people to record the audio of these stories, which can be done on your cell phones. So if you're interested in being part of that soundscape, do contact me, because I do need a range of age groups. So you can see that I've projected that same footage that I've shown you through these crystals. So I'm still in the experimental stage right now, but it's getting closer to what I'm hopefully planning to do. So I've been experimenting with different strengths of projectors. And I've found the brightness that I require. And I'm also figuring out the height and the width of what this wall of crystals is going to look like. And you can see the footage playing on the wall in the background too. This is just some more footage that that I'm gonna, be going through and editing to try to create some kind of narrative. But it's interesting, especially about the Battle of Kohima, seeing the animals that were used and some of the amount of physical effort that had to be done by the soldiers to clear the paths. So after collecting all these stories, I'm left with a question: why is this history not part of our collective narrative? So what's next? I'm still collecting photographs, as I've mentioned before, and separate from my art project, I also want these photographs and stories to be accessible by anyone. So the University of Rhode Island, where I'm a professor, have agreed to house the collection, and they'll be publicly accessible by anyone who wants to do any research or just even want to look at the photographs. And it'll take a little time to happen, maybe over a year's time, but those photographs will be up by 2022. I'm also going to follow up on 2 of the prisoner of war stories I received. I told you about Lieutenant General Culler, but I also received a second story when I met the niece and grandson of Major R.G. Salvi, who was a prisoner of war in Italy. There were 5 POWs who hid for over a year: Chaco, D'Souza, Salvi, and the brothers Sharafat and Murafat Ali. Major Salvi's grandson, Samar, heard these stories as a child and recently went back to Italy and reconnected with these families and their children. The Salvi family has installed a plaque thanking the village of Villa San Sebastiano. And this is just a brief excerpt from when I spoke with him.
And then the story just unfolds, and it's beautiful to see the Italians. So this village is, of course, in Italy. And it's beautiful to see the Italians, who were actually enemies, helping these enemies and sheltering them in their houses and, giving them food. So for about a year, one whole year, the 4 of them lived in either people's houses. There were 4 or 5 local families in the village who were taken in on this secret, and they hid these people in their houses. The Germans were, of course, frequenting the village, so the Germans were all over the village and celebrating in the evenings and stuff like that. And the Germans had no idea that there were 4 prisoners who had escaped living in this village. At some point, it became really dangerous to live in these people's houses because the Germans had got some kind of inclination that something's going on. So in the middle of the night one day, the families who were helping them, they took them all the way up to the mountains, as this village is at the foothills of a mountain. So they took them there.
Okay. Coming from a Syrian Christian family, I would love to connect with the families of Chaco, but also D'Souza and the brothers Sharafat and Murafat Ali. I've heard that they went to England, but other than that, no one has been able to find them. Since starting this project, I've also been contacted by an Italian librarian who's given me more information, and the contact information of an Italian dentist who is an amateur military historian on the Indians in Italy, and a number of other threads that all lead to Italy. One of those threads is an email from Chris Steve Kelly, who's an Australian, and his father was a POW in Campo 57 in Italy. There were at least 2 Indians in that camp, and he got this information from his father's diary, and he's trying to locate these families. So if any of you can help with that, that would also be fantastic. Another thing is that I've been awarded a Civitella Ranieri Artist Residency. So my plan is to collect more information about these prisoners of war and these Italian families, and then during my residency, create a new body of work. So I'm going to end this presentation with 2 quotes. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And the second is, art is the highest form of hope. And I'd just like to give credit to my husband, David Wells, for the contemporary footage. If you want to see other bodies of work, my website is annumatthew.com, and my email is indiansoldiers1945@gmail.com. So thank you very much, and I look forward to answering a lot of questions, and I'm sure many of you have a lot of information that will be invaluable too. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Annu. Wonderful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, the floor is open for questions. I mean, we have an interactive session. You can shoot your questions, please. Ram, please unmute everyone so that they can.
Oh.
From our side, we have unmuted. You can, those who want to speak, just unmute. On your left bottom corner of this thing is the, you have this mute, unmute sign. You just click on the take off the cross and you can speak. Please. Ms. Rima Kashyap, you can carry on with the story if you have something more to say. I mean, you had something to.
Had very specific offensive rules. The NH-60 Romeos are US Washington.
You're not very audible.
Aircraft carrier and other warships. They will be used for
Sir, good evening. I am Colonel Arun Hariharan, sir. And thank you, Annu. It was a very nice thing. I joined a little late. I think I joined 10 minutes late, but it was really nice and something very close to my heart. And first time I've been on this forum, sir, I would like to thank Major Venkat who had shared this, knowing my interest. We work in the same company. And I'm a ex-army veteran. I'm a second generation soldier. My dad was also there in the army, and he's in fact based out of Chennai, and I'm based out of Delhi. I live in Delhi. So there's a little piece, there's a small thing which I was able to, kind of identify with. Because when I was commanding my regiment, I'm from the Sappers, I'm from the Bengal Sappers. I commanded my regiment about 11 years back. When I was commanding my regiment, one of the projects I took up was to write the history of the regiment, to make a kind of a history book of the regiment. And the history goes back to the Second World War, like you said. So I started digging up things, and I was very surprised to learn that we actually had 2 battle honors and 1 theater honor and 2 military medals, which we were not even aware of. Because sadly, like she said, after independence, somewhere those things got lost somewhere in the haze of time. And unfortunately, engineer regiments were not regiments those days. They used to be companies. They used to be independent companies. So when we dug into it, I finally was able to, like I told you, one was Sangro and one was, I think, Casino. We found 2 battle honors and we found 1 theater honor for the recapture of Burma. We found 3 things there. 2 were for the Field Park Company and 1 was for one of the field companies. So we found those. And I found, in fact, 2 military medals also. And I was, in fact, able to get the original scan of the original citation from the Royal Archives. We paid a small fee. I don't remember what the fee it was those days. And, online we got those. We paid a small fee and we got those. So, in fact, the Royal Archives has got a lot of, they have a website in which there's a lot of information available on that. So, when I started doing some little research on that, I found all this, and I was even, in fact, able to get the actual, we had to pay a small fee of a few pounds, I think, and we got the scanned copy of those. They were kind enough to share those. So, that really helped in our book, and we were able to dig into it. And unfortunately, I was not able to get any first-hand accounts because it was way, that was in like 2008-9, and it was way long back. So I was not able to get any first-hand accounts, nor could I identify any survivors. But then I did find some people who were there in the regiment at those times and things like that. They were in Italy, and then they came to, they laid quite a few bridges in Italy during Sangro and the operations there. So that was my experience. Unfortunately, World War II and beyond, we don't have too much of data. We have not kept too much of data. Post the thing and things, we have a lot of history available with us post independence, but pre-independence, unfortunately, we don't have it, and we didn't. Somewhere the government policy also, I think, a lot of those battle honors went repugnant, and before that, the First World War and things like that. Those things, they're not even recognized anymore. So, but it's unfortunate because as a soldier, I look at it that whether you fought for it is finally Naam, Namak and Nishan. You're fighting for your section, you're fighting for your platoon, and you're fighting for your regiment. The country comes last, actually. If you honestly ask me, the soldier who goes to the battle is fighting for basically for his regiment's colors. So the country definitely comes, but it is the regiment colors, the regiment honor which a person fights for. So as a soldier, I look at it in a way that these are very important to be preserved, and I'm very happy that you've done this kind of a body of work you've created, and it's really amazing to see all this, because somewhere this has been unrecognized. I fully agree with you that this has not been recognized, and the forgotten soldier, or the theme of today's talk, I think, is very, very pertinent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Only when Colonel Arun was talking about this Bengal sappers only, I don't know whether I failed to alert you, or have you been able to lay your hands on the book India's the Father's Field, India's Second World War?
No, I have not.
Raghu Karnad.
Okay.
There's a wealth of information in that. It's a story of a Bengal sapper officer. I mean, it starts in Madras, the story.
I have not seen that. I have not read that book, sir. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a wonderful book. It's because it's written by journalists. Not, normally when we soldiers write the book, it has got that officialdom.
Could you repeat the name, sir? I would definitely love to,
It is Raghu Karnad is the author. The book is Father's Field, India's Second World War.
Okay, sir.
I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book. In fact, about the book launch, I'm sorry, Annu, I sort of, it didn't strike me not to alert you on this. This is because it starts, the story begins from Calicut. The family was in Calicut. In fact, their descendants, they're still in Chennai, I'm told.
I actually met Raghu and his mother, and the photographs are part of my project.
I see. Yeah. That's a wonderful story that Raghu has there.
Yeah.
There are three brothers going in. Yeah. So I'm glad that you got that. That's one good story.
Yeah. His mother happens to be my mother's classmate from school.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So please, ladies and gentlemen, you have anything more to share? We have no time limits as such. You can go ahead and come out here.
Good evening, everyone. Happy New Year.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So this week I researched on my maternal great-grandfather. He was a Havildar in the British Indian Army. He served in the Baloch regiment, and he was also posted in Karachi. So I don't have his pics in uniform. It's all laid in Himachal. So he was posted in the European theater. I don't have much information. This is his wife, and his name is Havildar Bridge Lal Sharma. And this is his last color pic on December 2003. I guess it was his last color pic. He died in May 2005, and I regret that I don't have much information, and I wish I could contribute a lot towards your project. Thank you. Have a nice day.
So how do you feel about finding out that history about your grandfather?
Ma'am, in my both paternal and maternal side, my family is totally vast and contributed a lot towards the country. So it's quite confusing that both in the maternal and paternal side are quite connected to each other in one way or in the other. So it's quite astonishing, and thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any more stories, questions? interesting anecdotes, and we will be having very kindly make an effort to collect some photos and stories as well. We will forward it to Annu. This is a wonderful project, as I said, something we all should be more active with this. Whereas we are, tied to the.
Yeah. Can I say something?
Yeah, please.
See, I don't know. Every battalion in the Indian Army, maybe a regiment or a battalion or whatever, they have plenty of, the historical records. As far as my battalion is concerned, I was commissioned in the 2nd Battalion, the Rajputana Rifles, which was called the Prince of Wales Zone. It was raised in 1817, and we still have the first, order for, for the raising of this battalion, and the number of officers who were there. It's all, handwritten. It's all on records. Britishers were very, very meticulous in keeping records of their battles and of all the events and of the whatever battle they fought. Their war diaries. They're all very meticulous, which we didn't do. So even today, even our battalion has got so much of a material, and we have a museum. You just open up and you'll find so much of photographs of the people taking part in the World Wars One, World War Two, and even in the Persian War and whatnots. And every battalion has got it. So it's a treasure trove. If you could get a hold of somebody from the Ministry of Defense, and if you enter into our archives within the battalions itself, you'll get plenty of them. And it was a wonderful job which you are doing, Annu. Really, I appreciate the way you are going about it. Really wonderful, amazing. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I didn't actually want pictures of the soldiers fighting because I want people to connect with them on a personal level. So I am using the archival footage as a way to relate it to the actual war. But someone who has been very helpful to me is Squadron Leader Rana Chinna, who some of you may be aware of, who has an archive and collection in Delhi. So he, from his collection, I had received a number of photographs, especially connected to the Air Force.
Yeah,
but that picture. Go ahead.
Yeah, he's in the United Service Institute.
Yeah.
He's doing a lot of work on that. And he's also
He had a wonderful, it was like a symposium with a number of younger people speaking, each one with a different focus connected to World War II. One was about women in the Indian Army, another was about the Northeast. I think it was recorded, it was done for the British Army Museum, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know whether you got the story of, one called, I think in the Second World War, Tiger Tyagarajan. Tiger Tyagarajan was a emotional Ottoman here. He was he Second World War only or First World War, because he had visited his. Emotionally, you there? Yeah, he had visited the, in France. He was shot down in France. And then they've also got a sort of grave maintained there. Tiger Tyagarajan, originally from Pondicherry, he went to France because, French were making them citizens. Then he enlisted in the Royal Air Force. Yes, he was, I'll try and get that photograph. Tiger sitting on with his fellow pilots.
I'll email you to remind you.
Yeah, because we had featured, I don't know how it is, we had featured in our, we had an event where Emotional Ottoman presented on, because he served as air attaché in Paris. So he traveled all around. And he had all these, we had a presentation by him at that time.
Good evening, Annu. I'm Colonel Krishnaswamy.
my regiment is the Jammu and Kashmir Rifles. The general had given you a very good idea that you should try and contact the regimental centers where they have got their museums. Most of our regiments are very old. My regiment is more than 200 years old. And we not only fought the Britishers, and we were an independent state force. And we were in all over the world, in East Africa, Europe, Burma, I mean, name it, and they were there. And with the result there, we have got a collection of all these things there in the museums. And they are very prized possessions. I would recommend a personal visit to the regimental centers to have a glance at it and then say what all you need. And you might be able to take photocopies of that. And perhaps some of the families may be even alive today. The Gadwal Rifles, for example, is one of the oldest regiments, like Raj Rifles. Gadwal Rifles is another battalion, Lansdowne. Their regiment center is full of details. In fact, when I visited them, they had gone to the various villages in the interior and collected the letters that have been written by the Viceroy to the widows of the soldiers who died for them, and the citations that are given to them. Those were all kept in mud pots and in earthenware, and they were all taken out and brought to Lansdowne, and those are kept in museum. That will be wonderful to study for you, and that therefore it is well worth it for you to make a personal visit to these old regiments of the Indian Army who were serving with the British and also with state forces. They would provide you with a fund of information. The person who died day before yesterday, his father, who was martyred in the Indo-Pak War, he fought with the Britishers and the military cross, and his wife is still alive. So therefore, people of this variety, you will get a plenty provided you have a personal visit to the regimental centers, speak to the commandants, and then say whether they can help you out in your research.
Yeah, there's quite a point in what the colonel says. And what happens is when you're going to the Army Headquarters archives, they'll mostly have ordinary records, the battle records, and you won't have personal, some of the regiments have got sons or grandsons serving there still. They'll be able to give you a little more personal information in the lines that you seek.
There are generations of families, third generation, fourth generation, who have been serving in the armed forces. So they would be having plenty of them. A bit of a, shall we say, personal involvement rather than relying on somebody else going into the army headquarters and all. Those things won't fetch you that
kind of dividends
as your personal visit to the
regiments will be able to give more personal information. I quite agree with you. That's
also, I suggest you must interact directly with the battalion commanders. Battalions which are very old battalions. Like my battalion is about 220 years old.
Yeah.
And if you go to the battalions, they will have details of the soldiers. Apart. But whereas you go to the regimental center, they have only certain very major, write-ups of or major documents and things like that. But nothing personal which Annu is looking for. So the
you're right. It has to be at the unit level. At the unit level only, you can get such detailed
exactly. That's right.
Yes.
So how would I find out who the battalion commanders are?
To start with, you can contact the regimental headquarters. Let's say, for example, nearest is the Madras Regiment. Wellington is the regimental headquarters. There you contact and the battalion locations they cannot give, it is always ATOs. But that is the starting point. As General Rajiv was saying, so you have to go to the battalion to sort of the individual units, the battalions or regiments in cavalry.
There are certain regimental centers very easily accessible. One is this Rajrif Regimental Center, which is in Delhi Cant. It's just on the station road. You just contact them, and they will be able to tell you. And always in Jaipur,
my regimental center is in Jabalpur.
Yeah, Jabalpur, Wellington.
There are 3 centers there: Signals, Ordnance, Grenadiers, Jammu Kashmir Rifles. 3 regiments, which are all very old regiments.
And Gurkhas are in Dehradun. Gurkha Regimental Center.
Glance
lot of
down.
soldiers.
At the regimental center, the commandants, will give you certain references to the battalions which you can visit. And battalions are there, which are posted, which
and
are
the battalions are in peace area, perhaps you may be able to go there. But if they are located in a field area, you may not be able to go there.
No, sir.
So-
See, like every regiment has got certain field stations. Like Rajarif has got two units always located in Jaipur. There'll be always one in Delhi. Similarly, there is always one Madras regiment in Trivandrum. So you have to connect with them through the regimental centers.
And another point is when you say Indian soldiers of World War II, I mean, it's quite a few of them, they come from Pakistan. So, I mean, I don't know how much Pakistan army will be helpful now. But they also have a lot of soldiers there. I mean, it may be worthwhile pursuing them. I mean, if you have contacts in Pakistan and, since army is much more powerful there, they should be able to sort of...
In 2014, Ramu, in 2014, I went to Delhi, where the centenary of the World War I, 2014 was celebrated. And where people from the Pakistan, erstwhile in India at that time, Afghans, Baluchis, they had all come there, and there's a huge exhibition that is organized. And I attended that place, and there was an interaction between the Pakistan families and the Indian families they were linked together, because at that particular time, it was a common area where the Indian government had stepped in, and the exhibition was organized in the Manekshaw Hall in Delhi. So there are a variety of photographs there also available. So if you go down to Delhi, if you go to Rajiv Center, you can contact the Indian Army Museum that is being established now. There's a big way that they are trying to establish the museum for the Indian Army, and they are collecting a lot of material for that. You may be able to get some from there also.
And not only Pakistan, I'm saying even Bangladesh has got a lot of veterans. I invited Colonel Sajjad of Bangladesh Army to attend. I don't know whether he's there. Sajjad, are you there? No. So I'll connect you to him. I'll send you his email ID.
Okay.
He will be able to
That
sort
would be
of...
good.
his own father was a Second World War veteran. Later on, he fought in the Bangladesh Liberation War and all. He was one of the speakers in one of our meetings here.
Okay, that would be great.
Yeah.
I do have a few photographs from Pakistan and Bangladesh that I got through social media.
I see.
But one other idea is, because a number of people emigrated to England or to Great Britain. So another idea is to actually go to England to try and get some of those photographs.
Yeah, that also has happened. Quite a few immigrated. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, are there any more questions? Or yes, anything? Yeah. I don't know whether you're, since when I saw NMC earlier, I remembered, his father-in-law, my Colonel Thambi.
You can see him on the screen behind me.
Oh, he's there. Can you tell him to come forward? Yeah, he's there. He's sitting there.
He's 99.5.
Why don't you tell him to come to the screen? He is Colonel Thambi. He's a Second World War veteran, and originally Travancore forces. Later on, after independence, he transferred to Gurkhas. But with the Travancore forces, he took part in Second World War. Good evening, sir.
Ramendra.
Ramendra here, sir.
Oh, hello.
Hello, sir.
Good evening.
Meet Rama Matthew here. She is collecting photographs of Second World War. I would like to have a photograph of yours. Second World War veterans photographs she is collecting.
They are collecting some details on Second World War veterans. Oh.
My birthday is in 29th April.
It is
1921.
100 years, sir. So we will great applause for you, sir. 100 years. So hitting century. Great. Last year when I came here, your daughter told us that, Daddy will be 100 next year, February, when we met when you came to Trivandrum. Wonderful, sir.
What?
Colonel Thambi was in AFUA.
Yeah, yes, he was there when he was in
He was
Chennai.
our member.
And now
I know you, sir. Colonel Thambi, sir. Good evening to you.
Krishnamurti.
Krishna Swami.
Hello, how are you?
Sir, good evening to you. Colonel Krishna Swami. Ormanda.
I know. In Chennai, he used to walk around all lot of places here. Board the suburban train.
Good evening.
So I'll get his photograph and also write up on him, Annu. I'll mail it.
Okay, that would be great. That would be great.
I know him. I mean, this is what happens is, preoccupied with this thing. Individual stories, for this sort of thing you use there with us.
I'm also going to contact you for maybe recording one of these stories. I see you have a nice mic over there.
What? Yeah. Lot of people say that, there was one boy here whose grandfather was there. I told him to get a photograph. He said they're not able to do it.
These three.
Ram, I think Colors of Glory is
Second World War fight ചെയ്ത സോൾജേഴ്സിനെ പറ്റി ഒരു ബുക്ക് എഴുതുക. അവര് പേപ്പർ പ്രസന്റ് ചെയ്തു.
Who?
So she wants to take it.
No, she's working on the Second World War, the stories and photographs of the Second World War veterans. That's the. I'll write your thing and send that.
Okay.
NMC, you send me his photograph, okay? That he can handle. NMC is his son-in-law. He's there also. It's okay. Other family friends, I'll get that. I don't know how I missed it. Ram, I think we can make it another objective of Colors of Glory too. We can put it on our website, like whatever we can. We will try the best we can.
That would be great. That would be wonderful.
Yeah. So that it is part of our objective anyway, promoting awareness of India's military heritage. I mean, that's what we are about. So it's, but we go in a little different way, as you saw.
I'll collect more details from him and send it to you.
Yeah,
that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Fantastic.
And he can't hear properly. That is why he couldn't play. But he's healthy, no problem. Walking.
NMC, what I'll do is I'll send an email ID to you. You get a photograph and complete write-up. Send it to you directly.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure. And photographs with Bindu, you, everybody. So that.
Yeah. Sure.
So it's how we. He lived his life. It is quite a story, I mean, which, as we know. As a sad part is when he lost his son, who was only 28, he was a mariner in an unfortunate collision of ships in which port it was, NMC?
Lisbon, Portugal.
Yeah, Lisbon.
Okay.
Lisbon.
That was in 1980.
He died a very brave death trying to save the captain and his family who was below. Otherwise, he could have saved himself and he died. But the colonel lived with it. I mean, never, was a kind of undeterred, a very brave man I've seen. And his daughter was left. Daughter is, of course, married to NMC. So that's the story. You send her a write-up. I'll send the photographs. I'll send you.
We'll do it.
I'll connect you to Colonel Sajad also. I think he should be able to do it.
Okay.
Ramu, I'll try and get you two of my uncles who are in the medical corps.
Sir.
And they fought the war in Iraq and Italy also. So I'll try and see whether I can try and locate their photographs.
I'll put her email ID and details on our group itself, so you can send it directly.
Okay.
I need not be an intermediary. You keep sending to her. Like Danesh has done it even before the meeting. Danesh has done it. Send the photographs. He told
I'll
me.
try
I
my
said,
best to send more
yeah.
info.
So I told him, send it to her direct. I mean, why are you giving it to me? So
Anu, I'll
that
try
would be
and see whether I
wonderful.
can help you out.
That would be fantastic. Thank you.
after all, you're doing a job, but we all should be doing. So, so it's a wonderful work. Any more questions or interactive stories anybody wants to share? There are no more. We will. Please stand by while we play the national anthem. This away. And then share. I should go to. Hey, why is it not coming? Must it be soon? It must come. Right. 1 minute. Just wait whatever 1 second. Something went wrong. Share. Okay. And I have to come. So there we are.
Good evening, Captain Ramchandran.
Good evening.
Yeah, I'm sorry I joined. We had 3 meetings, so I was on all the 3
No
meetings.
problem. If you have something to share, you're most welcome. We have formally closed the meeting, but still it's open.
Thank you, sir. It was nice. What all little bit I could hear later.
Yes, okay.
I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you, Captain. I really appreciate it, and we will continue to be in touch.
Okay. We'll definitely be. Thank you very much. Annu, it was a wonderful evening we had. So we look
You're
forward
welcome.
to
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, lady.
All right.
Right.
Good night, everyone. Happy weekend. Stay safe.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night,
Thank
Anu.
you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.